Hi, this is CricketSong. We're from Lunar Wisdom, and you're watching The Sacred Circle. We broadcast live every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I'm here this Friday with my usual co-host, who is off camera but on audio this week.
LippyWitch.
Yay. And today we have a special guest. We have the KickAss witch herself, Joanna DeVoe. Yay!
Yay! Hi!
Yay!
Oh, I'm so excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. This will be fun.
Yes, it will. This week we're gonna talk about the spiritually mature witch, which I think is a wonderful topic. Joanna suggested we start talking about that, and I think that's wonderful because I don't think we've even discussed any sort of concept surrounding that, have we, Lippy? I don't think we have. So this is great. This is great. What I'd like to kind of start with, because, you know, we have a whole bunch of different guests on the show, I like to start with some definitions so we understand what this group is talking about. So I'd like to start with defining magic and then defining what we mean when we say witch. Because, as I said, we've had different guests who define it in different ways. So, Joanna, you want to give us your definition of magic and witch?
Yes, I would love to. My favorite things to talk about. Well, I think a witch is someone who calls themselves a witch, and that there's a whole spectrum. I call myself a witch because I love magic, and I love the word witch. I love that we get to reclaim a word that people used to be accused of being and then persecuted for being, and now, like, you can say I'm a witch, and it might make some people uncomfortable, but they're not legally allowed to burn you at the stake. And so I think I joke, but not. I think there's like real power in that. Like, I feel like an ancestral, even people that didn't call themselves witches, people that were persecuted for being witches, or practicing folk magic, or practicing any religion that was taboo and that they got persecuted for, I kind of feel like the spirit of them holding us up in a way. So I like it for that reason. And for me personally, it involves, I don't really worship anything, but I adore and work with nature. I believe I'm a part of nature, a part of the divine, and that's expressed in nature and in me. So magic, nature, that's kind of what it personally means to me. And that whole, like, are we allowed to swear?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
And it just, you know, it's kind of a fuck you, and I enjoy that. I think magic is, again, people generally agree on what it is. I spell magic with a K to differentiate it from the magic of stage magicians, which is illusion, but I think there's a really fine line between the two, and that sometimes, you know, there's overlap there. And because I've been to magic shows that felt very magical. And the way I look at magic is creating change in conformity with your will. Some people amend that and say it's creating a consciousness in change in conformity with your will. But I believe that when you change your consciousness, as within, so without, the outer world reflects that. So it's kind of saying the same thing, and stage magicians do that. A really good stage magician creates an internal shift, and when you shift the inside, the outside starts to change, and that is so magical. I love that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Magic with a K is definitely the same definition I use as you do, and I remembered that we had similar beliefs in regards to that. And I find your definition of witch very different from some of our previous guests, and I definitely see where you're coming from. I totally believe the whole idea of, which I think is what you just expressed, when you align yourself with a word, you then have the energy of everything that is associated with that word. And like you said, whether those who were accused of being a witch were actually a witch, or the the people who are persecuted in that sense, that energy of them, the spirit of them, the magical essence of them is definitely aligned with that. And we have, as I've joked before, the power of 10,000 witches behind us or more when you use that word. I think that's, I mean, as I joke about that, but there is still some truth behind that as well. So Tara, do you have anything to add about the magic or the definition of witch before we move forward?
Nothing that I haven't said before, but I definitely am very much akin to her, as I don't worship anything specific, and I definitely see nature is its badass. You know, it's you don't fuck with nature. Nature affects everything around us, and it's not just the tangible nature either.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And although I do align myself or work with specific personified deity, I am definitely someone who understands that they're just personifications of something that is greater. They are just, you know, something that I've put a face to, but the energy behind that is beyond a personification. So, okay, so we all understand where we're coming from, and if you're watching, oh, and I also want to tell the viewers that are live watching with us, the Q&A is activated, so if you want to ask a question or if you have a comment that you want to share, if you are on the events page, there should be a little icon that says Q&A, and you can click on that and type in your question or your comment. If you're not on the events page and you're watching it from my YouTube channel, I believe there is a link somewhere to the events page that you can go there.
Itself.
Okay, and you can use the Q&A. So we want to hear from you if you have a question or a comment, and I'll make sure that I read it so everybody can hear. Okay, so with that, how might a witch, someone who identifies as a witch, use magic in a beneficial way in their daily life? So how could someone who may not even, you know, have a typical, I guess, or a practice that you read in all those books, but they identify as a witch, how can they, or we, or I, or you, use magic in a way that they can benefit them moving forward? How might that, might that look like, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Yeah. Are you asking me?
Sure, we'll start with you.
Okay, all right. Well, I wrote one of those books, but it's really with this intention. It's called The Spiritually Mature Witch, of being a witch on the go. Because a lot of what you learn, especially when you start out maybe with like Wicca 101 books, or if you really, you know, want to get deep into its ceremonial magic, things like that, there's a lot of complex rituals or detailed rituals or time-consuming rituals. And what's always interested me is magic on the go, like little things that you can do. Like one of the most simple things you can do is work with the power mudra, where, you know, you practice it. This is my personal fave right here. You practice it alone when you're meditating, and it's kind of like that Pavlovian effect. If you know Pavlov, he worked with the dogs, and he would ring a bell when he fed them, and then pretty soon all he had to do was ring the bell, and the dog would salivate whether or not there was food. So it's working with your mind in that way, of getting into like a light alpha state in any situation. So you're in a hurry and you need the traffic to part, instead of like freaking out and like swearing at people. It always seems to make it worse. Like there's an energy to that, where if you do that, you are going to hit every single red light. You're going to be in the slowest lane. And I have found there is real magic in having this power mudra, this instant magic where you just take a breath, and because of you've done it now 1,000 times, you use it all the time, it slips you into this magical alpha state, and like magic, the world around you starts reflecting that, and it can really open your passage, just using traffic as an example. But there are a lot of things that you can do in your everyday life. Magic is everywhere. I'm reading a book right now, don't say book to me, because I'll just start talking about, I'm like a huge book nerd, but I'm reading Robert Moss's Sidewalk Oracles. I'm almost done with it, but I've been posting lots of quotes and things online. But it's basically treating your world as a giant tarot deck, and
Nice.
reading the signs and symbols that are happening all day long. And in that way, you know, your life can be very witchy because you're being guided, and that is such a fun book for anybody. You don't have to be a witch. For anybody that just loves synchronicity and things like that, I really recommend checking it out.
Can you explain what a mudra is specifically?
Yeah, it's a hand gesture.
Okay.
It's a hand gesture. Hindu. It's a Hindu hand gesture, but it's been appropriated by Western culture for a long, long time. You'll learn them if you do yoga, and I don't necessarily attach it to any deity or anything like that. I take a very psycho-spiritual approach to everything I do. I'm really interested in the point where psychology and spirituality meet, and the ways that body affects the mind and the mind affects the body. So holding your body in certain body postures even like changes your state of being. But mudras are so...
Ooh.
Oh no. Oh no.
Should type her. Oh, there.
Oh,
Oh,
is she back?
oh, you
Hello.
froze
Yeah, you froze.
Oh, where did you lose me?
about a minute ago.
Where you said something about body language or the way you hold your body.
Okay, well, the way you hold your body affects your state of being, but the reason mudras are so great, hand gestures in particular, is because, you know, you can like cross your fingers like this, like people do for good luck. It's about the consistency of doing that with the intention, the same intention. It's very discreet. So you don't have to be like, oh, when you're at work. You can just put your in your pocket, and nobody knows that you're like working a little bit of magic. You don't have to carry cumbersome stones with you. It's like very simple, very easy, portable magic, and that's why I like it.
And while you were talking, I mean, I'm familiar with mudras, but as you were talking, it just made me think of how they work as sort of like a trigger. I know we usually say trigger, and there's usually bad connotations to that, but it really sounds, I mean, to me, a very similar thing. It will trigger you. It'll trigger that energy, that magic, that intention. If you've, like you said, you've been practicing it, and then all of a sudden you need to trigger or tap into that energy and that intention with just a simple, you know, whatever it is, whatever mudra you're using.
I mean, even
Yes.
putting your hands together, like, to pray would be one, I would assume.
Yes, it's exactly that. In Instant Magic by Christopher Penczak, he talks about that. And it's also in the Inner Temple of Witchcraft a little bit as well. I love him. See, books. Will always come back to books with me.
And it's funny that you mentioned Christopher Penczak, because I just got this through Amazon yesterday in preparation for a future show, Ascension Magic by Christopher Penczak. I love him.
Yeah, he's a great teacher.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so that's an easy way, and I think people who haven't practiced using that kind of mudra, I think, is a wonderful way to start. We do have a question. Shadowlander asks, "Hey ladies, have any of you ever done anything that could be considered sea witchery or sea magic?"
No, but you would think I would, just because I live so damn close to the water. I have wanted to look into it more, though, for sure.
Only very simple magic. I don't spend a lot of time at the ocean. I had an amazing time with my son last year on the beach in Cayucas, where we stood out on the beach. It took maybe 2 hours. We were waiting for... It was a full moon lunar eclipse, and we were waiting for the moon on one side to come up over the mountains, but we were just in pitch darkness. Like, nobody was on the beach but us. We were the only ones, and we were really far away from any other people or homes or anything. So we just had the waves crashing and then what few stars they were, and we just stood out there in the dark for a long time. And then we just started screaming and yelling and cheering when the moon came up. And that felt very magical. But in terms of intentional magic, too, we've done things where it's so simple. I hate to disappoint you if you're looking for something more complex, but I love simple magic where you just take a stick or a really large feather with like a pointy end, and you write your intention in the sand, something beautiful that you want to bring into your life. And then you just stand there and kind of meditate on it and wait for, you know, it takes quite a few times for the ocean to come in and slowly wash it away. And you envision that the ocean is pulling that intention into itself and empowering it, you know, and then you say thanks and you walk away.
Mm-hmm. And some of the stuff that I guess, as you say, would be simple. I collect whenever I go, and it's very rare that I do go because obviously can't drive. I collect discarded shells that obviously do not have any creatures in it, and use those within spells. If you want to have like sea energy, collect some of that. Even collect sand, which I like collecting sand. I don't know if that's a weird thing, but if you want to have that energy and bring it home and then use it over time, I would definitely say using shells and sand from the beach is definitely useful.
Yeah, I collect shells. I collect sea glass as well. And I've done the same thing that Joanna's talked about, writing your intention in the sand and allowing it to wash away. I've also done just meditation by the sea, you know, stacking the stones, making the stone cairn things. That I've done that. That's a wonderful meditation. But I don't think I don't consider myself a sea witch. So anything I do is magic, no matter, I mean, whatever element I use. So I don't focus on just one element. So sorry, Shadowlander, if you're looking for anything more in depth, because I don't have anything either.
I would talk to the Sea Priestess Annika, because she does, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. The next thing I wanted to talk about is power. I mean, we talk about, you know, tapping into the energy. Do you associate just energy with power? Is it interchangeable to you, for you, ladies, or do you have a different, oh my God, I can't speak today, a different definition for power? Is it something, how do you view that within magic?
I think it's roughly the same thing, or could be used interchangeably.
Okay.
I feel like power is a force, and as well as energy is also its own force, and I think it could depend on what you're using the energy for, because when I hear power, I feel like that's something being pushed out from you, not necessarily, well, I guess you could take it in too, but my immediate thing is it's going out.
Okay, so you think that power is energy being propelled outward?
Majority, for me personally,
okay.
That's what my immediate thought is.
Okay. What about you, Joanna?
I think power can be receptive or projective. So like a magnetic power, I work with that a lot. I'm a big fan of the law of attraction, or a lot of people, like women, like to work with like the magnetic power of the womb and do womb magic, and men have that power too. But I know a lot of women enjoy working that way. I feel like they are a little bit different in that power is a directing or a harnessing of energy for a specific thing. It's not always intentional, because a lot of people have personal power that they're not purposely like amping up. They just have a certain charisma or a certain magnetic quality. That's the way I see it. What I'm really interested in terms of spiritual maturity is power over versus power within. And that's actually my definition, since that's the topic today, of spiritual maturity, is because power within is, in a sense, power over. Kind of like I was saying, you know, as within, so without. And it's the focus on power within, to me, is a product of spiritual maturity. Whereas if you're trying to control other people, you're really out of control. You're not in your power. You're not seated in your power. So just tying it in with the theme, that's kind of how I see power.
Yeah, I understand that, and I know a lot of people use the word power and energy interchangeably, because I've read it, I've seen it, and I've heard people talk about it. But for me, it's a little different too. I think everything has energy, and everything has potential power. But like you were saying, what do they do with that power? Are they trying to manipulate or influence others, or take control of a situation that perhaps they really don't have control over. Or sometimes, to be quite honest, at least from my perspective, they're trying to control a situation that really has nothing to do with them. And they really have no, I guess, it doesn't seem justifiable for them trying to control an issue that really has nothing, it's not their shit. And I think the spiritually mature witch or individual understands where that line is. Like you said, when they're trying to control something or having power over a situation, where I feel like if you are in your power, that you definitely know where it might be beneficial or hinder yourself and your own growth by trying to control a situation when you maybe don't have your own shit taken care of, or maybe you're insecure, maybe you're afraid, because I think fear tends to motivate a lot of people, fear of things, and they are trying to find some control within them by trying to control the things outside of them. And like Joanna had mentioned, as within, so without, as above, so below. Once you find that power and that understanding and that balance within yourself, you're able to then see in clarity, I think.
Yeah, and power within is not about control. Power within is about faith and trust and a connection to your higher will. Maybe like people listening, if you practice Salima, there's that conversation of like the ego's will or the true will, and maybe like an egocentric power, or it's actually a powerlessness. You're losing power when you're focused on trying to control someone else. You're losing power. You're just like giving it away, whereas power from within is so attractive and so magnetic. It does not require force. It's trusting that what's yours will come to you. What's meant for you will not. And in that way, it opens you up to possibilities that you didn't even know were possible. And that, to me, feels very powerful and exciting and magical. It makes every day an adventure.
And I think, going back to something we mentioned before, once you are in alignment with that powerlessness, receptiveness, it actually, really quick tangent here, side thing, it reminds me of the yin-yang, the receptiveness. There is, I can't remember exactly the cliche, but the idea is that receptiveness isn't weak. It's actually very strong, to receive. But when you're in alignment with that true will, your higher will, your true purpose, whatever it is that you want to name it, those synchronicities appear so much. Like you were saying, it's like everything, as you look around, you can see the signs that you're moving in the right direction to what you want to manifest. It's quite amazing, I think.
Yeah, that's the joy of being a witch, to me. And it takes a leap of faith in the beginning, because it's like, is this stuff real? So you have to suspend disbelief for a moment. But if you can do that, let's say with perfect love and perfect trust, because it's such a great cliche, life will start showing you itself, and you start seeing like, oh my gosh, it never gets old. I've been doing this for years, and I still am in awe and that wonder of like being a little kid, which is ironic. When you talk about spiritual maturity, it brings you right back around to being very childlike and excited about your life.
Yeah, not childish, but childlike. Right. Because there's a difference.
Yes. That wonder, that awe of like, oh my gosh, I just had a dream about this, and now it's happening. Oh, that's amazing, like, that's exciting.
Yeah, or you just, oh my God, I just had a conversation with someone yesterday about this very thing, and look it's unfolding before me. It's like that feeling I used to get when I was a little kid, Christmas morning, the magic of Christmas, time. It's like, oh my gosh, it's that kind of feeling. And at least for me, when you get that excitement bubbling inside of you, it's joyful, and then it just overflows, and then there's more and more and more, and it doesn't stop. And once you're on that roll, everything just falls into place, and it's like, it feels like it's effortless. Yeah, effortless. Right? Thank you. Yeah, and things are like, life is magical. But like you said, sometimes it's for some people, I think it's difficult to sort of go from being completely skeptical and cynical and, sort of doubting to taking that leap into this can happen. It is real.
Let me raise my hand.
Yeah. My husband has a difficult time sometimes finding jumping from that disbelief to sort of seeing things how they can fit together.
Especially when it's been such a long amount of time of feeling that way, like majority of my life, up until 5-6 years ago or so.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, try, and it's like, okay, I need to stop doing that.
Yeah.
Because I'm just putting the brakes on my own stuff.
Are you ladies hearing an echo when I talk? Because I grabbed some headphones just in case. Because I hear an echo and I don't, or maybe the audience can tell. Does this sound crappy? Because if you want, I can plug in some.
I hear a little bit.
There is an echo. I think it might. I think it's either from you or Tara. Because it's when
I've got headphones on. So.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. Did it go away?
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was
That's
screwing
okay.
up on recording.
It wasn't really distracting at all. So.
No, it wasn't. We do have another question from Luke Daigle. I don't even know. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. What are your guys' opinion on curses and darker spells? Do you do them? And if so, what would be the right time to do a curse? Meaning, how bad would it have to be for you to say, okay, it's time?
I'm not averse to them, but I haven't, like, in a very long time ever done one, and I can only count, like, on maybe, like, one hand how many times I've ever done it. I think it is, again, one of those things you do last option, and you just kind of think, like, are you doing it for the right reasons? Have you tried to do, like, fix the issue mundanely or in other spiritual ways, such as, like, maybe if someone's giving you bad energy, putting up a wall or something spiritually. There's so many other options than to go to a curse immediately. And most of the times, it'll either correct itself or neutralize it.
Yeah, that's just not in my nature. My opinion is that I curse you, I curse me. And why would I want to curse me? So I will cut you loose. I will do a cord cutting. I will set up boundaries, but I won't. That to me is giving your power away. I'm not giving you my power if you are doing something to harm me or irritate me or you've crossed a boundary. I will tell you to fuck off. I will tell you to leave. Never talk to me again. Don't look at my shit online. I have no problem standing up for myself that way because that sets a clear boundary. But in terms of magic or even my thoughts, I'm very careful to not hold someone in my thoughts that is trying to fuck with me. Like, and I'm sorry, I'm swearing a lot, but
that's okay.
We are fine with it, trust me.
You did ask us about cursing, so it involves cursing. Maybe that's my curse. Fuck off. And now out of sight, out of mind. Don't think about me. I won't be thinking about you.
Yeah, and I think I'm not going to say I wouldn't because I try my best not to say wouldn't or always or never because who knows if put in a certain situation. And like Joanna was saying, first of all, I see everything as energy. And if I'm going to do a successful curse, I'm going to need to align my energy with the intention that I'm sending out. So if I want to send out some bad juju, then I'm going to have to, in my belief, align myself with that bad juju. And like she said, if I'm going to curse you, then I'm going to curse myself because I have to get in that vibrational alignment. And I don't want to be there. I have taken so much time and so much personal energy and growth and letting go to get out of that sort of dark place that I've been years and years ago. And my life is so wonderful now. Why do I want to go back to that dark, ugly place, unhappy place? To curse
it should definitely not be the first thing you go to. Absolutely not, ever.
Yeah. I find, at least for me, whatever I'm living, whatever vibration I'm in now, the situations that I may have attracted into my life where I may have wanted to curse someone, a banishing was done, and that person is gone, and we live in the same city within blocks of each other. And it's been years, and I haven't seen this person since. It's amazing what banishings can do, cutting cords, letting go. It's almost as if they disappeared.
Mm-hmm. And I think we did a video on this as well, like a couple months ago. So if you want to look back in the playlist, you could definitely find it.
Exactly. I don't know which one it is, but
it's a while ago.
Yeah. I think, too, that comes back around to spiritual maturity, because to me, a hallmark of spiritual maturity is having healthy boundaries and not getting involved with emotional vampires, energy vampires. And if somebody has, like, captured your imagination to that degree, I mean, they could be doing really horrible things, you know, like threatening you physically. In that case, you need to call the police, damaging your property, something like that. But if someone has really gotten into your head that much, they're an energy vampire. They're taking your time. They're taking your precious thoughts. They're taking precious moments of your life. And so for me, you might have to repeatedly release them or let them go and just have awareness like, oh, crap, I'm playing that same tape in my head again. And I think it's easier. It's good to just do a little, sometimes just wipe your hands. Obviously, I'm big into hand motions, but like that you're wiping your hands of it, you know, or take a shower, do something to like transition. But then instead of trying to stop those thoughts or those feelings, you focus on something that feels good. And because I just find that's easier than trying to, I mean, anybody who's tried to spend time meditating understands that stopping a thought is almost impossible.
Like, you address it and then let it go away.
Focus on, immediately redirect your attention to something that feels good.
Yeah. I'm a big person for sound. I love music and I love sound. And for, you know, shaking it off, Taylor Swift, I can't help it. I mean, that's such a good song. You just shake it off. I tell you. You might hate it. But let me tell you, if you're really thinking something that's just replaying on and on and on and on and on in your head, put Taylor Swift on and just shake it off. And then play Katrina in the Waves and Walk on Sunshine. And it's wonderful. It just switches your energy around if you can get with it.
Absolutely. Music is so magical. It's so magical. I talk about the Church of Rock and Roll because you will see people. I love when a whole crowd is feeling the exact same thing. They're all like swaying or clapping. There's people crying. I'm like, if that is not a religious experience, I don't know what is. Because I grew up in church, and I have been to huge concerts. There's 1,000 people standing. They're like stand there waiting forever for the show to start. They're so excited. They stand through the whole thing. They all share like the same emotions at the same time, and they have this amazing spiritual experience. So I'm all about the music. That's awesome.
Yeah, no kidding.
Of course, if it's a good concert, because if it's a bad concert, then that's a shared experience in a whole other way.
Yeah, but you know what? It's still a shared experience. They're still experiencing the distaste for the bad concert.
Yes.
You harness that energy, and my God, can you imagine what? Can you imagine? What wonderful things we could do. Tammy Sade says, or asks, do you think us as witches must study all kinds of magic, even if we will never use it, like curses and other things? So do you think we should study all kinds of things, even if we're not going to apply that knowledge?
No. I think you can. I think witches are inclined to do that because we are curious and we like to learn, and I love learning about all kinds of different things, whether I practice them or not. Thelema has been my latest thing, and I don't see myself becoming an official Thelemite one day. I just love learning. I just enjoy it. I've been reading about powwow as much as I can as well, and those are two totally different things, but it just broadens your language and your understanding, and my personal enjoyment is finding the connection between different mystical paths. I love to see like the same ideas and themes repeat culturally over and over and over again. I I know you were specifically asking about, like, should you study curses even if you don't want to curse somebody, and I think I'm not a big fan of should, I guess, in general. I don't think you have to, but you can, and if it interests you, why not?
I feel like if someone's asking if they should, they already have some type of interest in it. Even if they're potentially averse to doing it, they're curious about it. And I agree. Like, if you're curious about it, learn about it. Why not? No one is stopping you, basically.
Yeah, I agree. I hate it when, well, yeah, I do. I dislike it when people tell me you should do this, or you have to do this, because I would automatically go the contrary. No, you're telling me I have to, so you know what? I'm not.
Oh, I hear you. Absolutely.
But I agree. Oh,
what is that Dorothy Morrison book about hexes and curses? She has a really popular, it might be called The Wicked Witch or something like that. I will read it at some point because I think it looks interesting and fun and people really like it. I feel like it's something to do with the Wicked Witch, and there's even like the stripy socks with the witchy shoes.
Yeah, what is it called?
It's definitely Dorothy Morrison. It's Dorothy Morrison.
It is Dorothy Morrison. Yeah, I can see the cover of it, but I can't remember.
I'm sure if anybody looks up that author, they'll see it pop up.
Yeah.
So that sounds like a distinct cover for sure.
It is. Oh gosh, that's gonna bug me, and I'll remember it when we're done. It's
a really popular book. Someone will probably put it in the comments because it's popular.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, if you're I was gonna say, if you're interested in something, then if you feel guided to read about it, even if you're not gonna do it. I think sometimes when you learn or you study something that is sort of like in contradiction to something else. So if you're a natural healer, you might find it beneficial to understand the nature of curses. If you are someone who does a lot of curses, it might be beneficial for you to learn about healing. Only that way you get the broad spectrum of everything from one end to another.
It's kind of like a doctor learning about how injuries are caused and then proceeding to fix those injuries.
Yeah, like that. I mean, but I don't know. I don't like...
Can I say something random that has nothing to do with this conversation?
Sure.
Jerry, I'm just dying over your head being in the center of that pentacle. You look like a queen or a high priestess, or like the rays of light are coming out of your head.
And actually, it's really centered today. Usually it's not this centered.
Like off to the side, usually.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
It actually is to hide the behind me, because honestly, the one bathroom in the house is over there, and upstairs is over there. So if anybody needs to use the restroom, I don't want people like my son right now walking. See how it's he is going to the bathroom. He's going to take a shower.
Happy trails.
It actually has a purpose, not to just look all nice. Although it does, I think. I have a different one. I'm going to switch it up next time, I think. But anyway, that was so random, right?
Yeah, I told you.
It works.
Tammy asks, have you ever had oh, I'm a witch moment? Like, you're doing something and being a witch is not in your mind at that moment, but suddenly it hits you?
I would have to go back into my past to answer that, because every day is a I'm a witch moment now. I love it, and I think about it all the time. I mean, well, I run a business called KickAss Witch, and I create tons of content, so everything I do, I'm like always thinking like, there's this like the audience, the people that listen to my podcast, watch the videos, and I was like, oh, they would love this, or I can't wait to tell them that, and this is so witchy. And so I have that, and then it's my spiritual practice, so it's constant. But I do remember a very distinct moment. I've always been interested in the occult. I really got deeply into the occult when I was channeling in my mid-20s. And I was very interested in the law of attraction before The Secret came along and all of that. And it was highly effective. I could make things happen, and there was just no explanation for it other than it had to be magic. And I was like, is this not magic? this is magic. And I had always wanted to call myself a witch one day when I was a little old lady. I thought when I was, you know, an old woman, I could get away with it because people allow like a certain level of eccentricity, you know. But it was when I had that thought that I thought, I'm going to call myself a witch now. And I started studying witchcraft. It still took me years before I publicly was calling myself a witch. But that's when I first had thoughts like that, like, I'm a witch. And then I can look back on early childhood things, prophetic dreams that I would tell my mom that would come true, or seeing ghosts, talking to spirits, making...
Oh, no.
She froze again.
Come back to us.
Oh.
Is she unfrozen now? Yeah, you froze again.
Okay, well, it probably wasn't that interesting what I had to say.
Yeah, I don't think I ever had an "oh, I'm a witch" moment either. I think it just, for me, just naturally progressed to a point. And I think it just always was. And I think somewhere in the back of my mind I knew it. But because I grew up Catholic, you know, that was evil and bad, and witches were associated with the devil and the devil. And yeah, I don't think I ever had that happen for me. What about you?
I'm still kind of like, I'm not mindful of it all the time, though it obviously is part of my daily experience. It's not always like a conscious thing I think about. So I can remember like this past year in particular when I went to the ocean and hiking with my best friend, and we just kind of stopped, and I was just like, yeah, this energy is seriously pagan. That's going on. Just kind of taking the energy of nature in at that time, and I'm just like, I like this.
I think too, I hesitate to use the word just because it seems dismissive, and I don't mean it in that way, but I think the word witch is just a label.
Right.
That we all, every human person has these abilities and this connection and this sense, but what witches do is we work with it actively and we honor it and we recognize it, and but everybody has these abilities, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree, and I think some people, some human beings, may either not seek it out because it's just maybe something that either they're fearful of or something that they just are not called to follow or to explore. Maybe their life experience is meant to do something else or explore something else. But I think I agree. We're all born with these abilities. It's just some of us are more inclined to develop or nurture or explore it more than others, I think.
Yeah. And it's a language. I mean, my mom, she has a prayer group that she meets up with at like 6:30 in the morning, and she's a devout Christian, and they would call what we call magic a miracle. Yeah. And they are very powerful. They will pray for things. They've shocked me many, many times. Or my mom might be, I'm just using her as an example, but because she's a very spiritual person, but she might be out on a walk and feel like that flood of like energy that would be like, oh, and she'd be like, it's, you know, I'm feeling the spirit of God, or you know what I mean? Like, it's how you frame it also.
Yeah, like we would say maybe the power of the divine or the energy of nature.
Yeah. Or the fairies. Right?
Well, that one would be hard for her.
Well, I mean, was it last week we were talking to Nico?
Yeah.
And he was saying, you know, the energy of nature is fae. And I'm like, hey, it's just like the fairies. I'm trying to embrace these teachings I learned.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to be a good student. Trying to swing us back to like the idea of the spiritually mature witch, it seems to me, at least in the last year, there's been a lot of talk about shadow working and shadows and working with our shadows or integrating the shadows, or it seems like within the last year. So with that in mind, how would a spiritually mature witch work with these? How do you define shadows? Because I know there's some different definitions out there too. Yeah. And how does the spiritually mature witch work with that or integrate? How does that play into her life or his? Sorry, his or her life.
Shadow work has become really trendy. I would say even in the last couple years or last few years, that it's definitely reaching a peak. I don't think that's a bad thing because I feel like it's the kind of work that we all need to do. Sometimes I call it deep soul diving. In the ebook, The Spiritually Mature Witch, there's the key of demonology, and I refer to aspects of the shadow as demons. And what these demons are, or what these shadows are they're the rejected parts of yourself. And they're the parts that were shamed out of you by your parents, by your teachers, by society, by yourself, by your peers. And they kind of haunt you. You cannot get rid of them no matter how hard you try. Like these things about yourself that humiliate you or embarrass you or that you don't want anybody to know. Maybe you don't even know they're there and you project them onto other people. So if you have a really strong aversion to a certain quality in other people, it's probably one of your shadows. And certain people trigger it. And if you're acting like an asshole, if you're embarrassing yourself or acting like a fool, most likely like you're hovering over a shadow. So the key of demonology is about love and learning to love. The only way that you can stop acting like a jerk every time one of your shadows gets triggered is to integrate it into, think of it as like a small child maybe. So it's not like this scary demon that you have to like push down and hide. You embrace it and you love it because it's part of yourself. And in that way it becomes integrated. And then every single demon, every single shadow has its gifts. So in integrating it back into your life, you find out what those gifts are. So for example, if you're a bitch, if you don't want to be a bitch, if that's like the worst thing anybody could ever call you and you're like a ridiculous chronic people pleaser, and then every once in a while something triggers you and you like lose your cool and you are doing the head bob and you're like just totally humiliating yourself in the moment by acting like a raving bitch, and then you're like, never again, I'll never do that again. Why did I do that again? You learn how to integrate the bitch into your love it. Love that as a quality that has power so that, let's say someone has been coming onto your property and damaging it.
Oh, no.
It gives you the courage to speak up for yourself and set healthy boundaries. And then that way, she gets a job and then she doesn't freak out because she needs attention. Does that make sense?
It comes off as confidence rather than bitch.
Yeah, I call it the sacred bitch.
There you go.
There's nothing wrong with about being a bitch occasionally. Absolutely not.
Right, right. So the mature witch then would learn to integrate these qualities into themselves. And I guess the immature witch would be someone who just sort of buries them, denies them, and doesn't want to deal with them, I guess, if we're looking on a... allows the bitch to just be wild.
Yeah, well, it tries to deny it, so it comes out at inopportune times. Like, that you try to distance yourself from whatever quality it is. It could be any number of things. People that are extremely homophobic and attack gay, like men that attack gay men, a lot of times, they got a little gay boy inside, and, I mean, it's they're projecting that on to that person. And it doesn't mean that a straight man that has those feelings, gets uncomfortable, is really gay. It just means he's got a little gay piece inside that relates to what it is to be a homosexual man, and he's been shamed about that, and so he shames other people. So it's very complex. It's complex work, for sure.
like having potentially he may have had a fantasy once that because
Yes.
it was out of the norm, it was erotic to them, but because of maybe how they were raised, they were taught that that was wrong, and then it's like, no, denial, 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 and then it's like, ugh, verbal vomit about it.
Yeah, and it scared them, like they scared
Mhm.
themselves.
Yeah.
Just own it.
Yeah.
And that doesn't even mean going around being like, I had a gay fantasy, everybody. It's just about healing that part of yourself that feels shame about that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Fear does a lot of crazy things to us, I think.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many politicians have we seen that have come out or been forced to come out as gay because, and they were, their history in their politics was anti-gay, like extreme anti-gay stuff.
Yeah. Well, but that's when you get into cultural shadows, too. I always tell people to look in the comments section of the Daily Mail if you want to see how cultural shadows express themselves, because they'll be like, Gwyneth Paltrow is Satan, I hate her ugly face. And you're just like, whoa, you don't even know that person. But it's interesting how, like, a collective can have its own shadow as well.
Groupthink.
Yep.
Definitely.
I agree. So the mature witch, the spiritually mature witch, knows how to use discernment. So how would that look if we're looking? I mean, using discernment in every aspect. How would that be illustrated in the life of a spiritually mature witch?
Oh, are you asking me?
Yes.
Discernment. That is an interesting one because it's kind of the chicken or the egg thing. Like, does discernment come before you are a spiritually mature witch, or does spiritual discernment come as a product of being spiritually mature? Because it's about being able to pause in a moment of choice, maybe in a moment where it's like the lesser of two evils or two really amazing choices, and maybe making the choice from a higher perspective, from a calm perspective, and discerning, or it's being able to discern. We were talking about energy vampires. Some people are like, well, they're a good person and they mean well, and it's like, well, you just opened up your vein. It was like, here you go. I mean, you're not able to discern between someone who is just using you for an emotional hit and someone who is a good match for you as a friend or a lover or whatever it is.
I hear a lot of that, especially recently. I keep hearing people are like, I trust too easily. And it's like, you got to find that balance of giving a little bit of trust while you're still kind of feeling out the person, because you can have a bond with a person and maybe not give all of your trust to them immediately. A lot of people, especially younger people, I think just out of habit maybe, are like, we're best friends immediately. That takes more than a day or two to be best friends, But yeah, definitely.
Yeah, well, I think
it's, you know what, it's about self-trust. Oops. It's about self-trust too, because that part of the book, I was a little bit worried. I used an example. Am I frozen?
No.
No. Okay. I used an example that I thought was a little bit extreme, but I decided to leave it in. Kind of what you're saying, Tara, about. I used an example of, like, if you're, these girls, they'll be at a frat party, for example, and like two boys want to lure them upstairs, and it's like, oh, it's so fun, and they have that voice in the back of their head, or not even a voice, it's just like a gut feeling of like, I'm in danger, but because the girl wants to look cool, because she wants to be accepted, because these boys are popular, you're like mentally justifying it, she goes upstairs. And discernment is being able to hear that warning signal or feel it. It's often not a sound or a voice. It's just a feeling that you have. And
that gut sense.
Yeah, that develops over time.
Yeah, it's trusting that intuition, that intuitiveness, not doubting yourself.
Because everybody has intuition. It's just how much we listen to it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And how aware your parents were. I mean, I think a really great parent can save you so many years of making bad choices. A parent that can teach a child. I don't think this is very common, but I'm sure they must exist. Parents that teach their children to listen to that voice and to honor that voice. And you know, when the parent is going, "Why didn't you get on the bus today?" and the kid is like, "I don't know, Mom. I just something felt wrong about it." To honor that, be like, "Okay, I'll drive you to school," and not shame them about it.
My parents absolutely were like that. They were very cool like that. And though
Really?
I may not have always listened to my own gut instinct, because that was a personal choice, they definitely were like, if it feels wrong, like if you're out somewhere and you feel uncomfortable, kind of a thing, if you feel like you're in a situation that doesn't feel right, definitely call us. We understand. And it's even sometimes, how can I even put it? Just just basically like trust your instincts on situations, and they definitely imposed that on me. But they were also hippies, so maybe that helped.
Yeah. Magical hippie parents.
Oh yeah. Oh, yes, definitely.
Dr. Branius, forgive me if I'm pronouncing your names wrong, wants to know, is there an opposite to energy vampires, and if so, what are they called?
A blood bag?
I would call them a donor. I would call them a donor for sure.
Energy donor?
Like blood donor, energy donor. I don't think that's a healthy spectrum to be on.
Either one.
Either end, yeah.
I agree.
It's usually you'll find the martyr complex active in a donor, a person who gives and gives and gives and gives and gives to the depletion of their own energy. They often complain about it, and then they become energy vampires because that's where they're getting their energy. That pride in being a martyr, the attention they get from talking about that. So it becomes a vicious cycle.
Yeah, and I would even say that my husband and I were actually talking about psychic vampires just the other day, and they're not all similar. I mean, you can have a psychic vampire who basically is the type of friend who will call you up and tell you all their troubles, just throw them at your feet and say, "Oh, that was great, thanks for talking," and hang up the phone.
Emotional vomit.
Right. That's a type of energy vampire as well, at least from my perspective, because they're sort of using you as a sounding board, and you may not, as the person on the other end of the phone, may not even be like communicating. You're just listening. So I mean, I know that there are those types who come in and like use you for advice, or ask your advice, or show up at your door and expect you to care for them. So I mean, I feel like vampires or energy vampires can come in a very broad, different types, I guess, or species, if we want to compare them to an actual.
Oddly enough, this is giving me like a mental image, and this may be crude, of a toilet. The energy vampire is the tank. The energy donor is like the flushing. The person who's doing the verbal vomit is doing something else. But it's a good visual, definitely.
Yeah, I think we call them vampires because we all have that mythology in our minds so deeply. And if you feel depleted after they're not always doing something obvious. There are some people that make you feel drained, and you can't even put your finger on why. But why ask why? If every time you leave the presence of someone you feel less than, I mean, cut them loose. You don't even have to say, "I'm cutting you loose." Just focus on spending time with people that make you feel good and energetic, and you leave their presence feeling better about your life.
Yeah, and if it's people that you in some ways may not want to cut loose or can cut loose, say like a family member, like a sibling or something, and they're not, like you said, not doing anything obvious, but that energy is happening, just when you know you're going to be around them, put up your barriers, be mindful, and limit your exposure to them if you can't completely be away from interacting with them.
Yeah, setting up your boundaries. I mean, you can even, at least for me, it's been beneficial to verbally say, you know, whoever this person might be that I can't just cut out, you know, you cannot call me at 2 a.m. I will not answer my phone at 2 a.m. You want to call me at, you know, 10 o'clock or 9, and I'm willing to talk to you then, but you cannot call me at 2 a.m. to tell me your newest drama. I won't pick up the phone.
Because I have a sister who I just, no, we're not very bonded. But when I'm around her, because to be around my mother would be to be around my sister, I have to be very mindful, like not feed into any of the BS. And then if she's in a good mood, then that's great. Then we thrive, and the walls are down then. But if she's not in a good mood, then those walls are up, and I make sure to be mindful of that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, with a sister, you have a lot of practice, so that's good.
It took time. I can tell you that much. Took till I was an adult, for sure.
I think that's a sacred contract. I think that that's a gift that her soul gave you that she doesn't even know she gave you.
I should tell her that.
It was a training for life. It was a little training.
And I wanted to mention those psychic vampires. Sometimes they're not even aware of what they're doing.
No,
Yeah.
never.
A lot of times they're not.
Rarely, I would say. And you know what else? They feed on energy. So if you're not giving them any, they have to go in search of it from somewhere else. They're not going to hang around if they're not getting that hit off of you. So, you know, if someone throws a hot potato at you, you don't have to catch it. You can just be like, and let it fall.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think going with the mature witch or the spiritually mature witch or individual, you are aware if you have these characteristics within yourself. Because I know for me personally, there was a time in my life that I was going through some, you know, the cursing darkness there, that I was probably an energy vampire and I wasn't aware of it because I was so depleted myself. So I think the spiritually mature witch can identify when they may be going through something and feel depleted and may be looking for energy through things like other people, when there are other ways that you can fill your own energy, fill that own bucket, instead of going to other people to get that full. And I think that comes with discernment and knowing yourself and being spiritually mature. You can identify those traits within yourself.
No, I definitely know. I've been that way for sure. And I still have my moments where I feel like I'm like, I'm going to be sucking energy off people today. And I tell them straight up, I'm like, either avoid me or just a heads up, I have some verbal vomit. So they know, like, all right, cool. I'm willing to listen. I'm prepared for you. So at least I'm conscious and aware that I don't want to do this, but just a heads up, it might happen.
Yeah,
I have a fair warning.
I totally appreciate you bringing that up, Sherry, because I was that for a long time. I was a victim. I connected through my victim. And what victims want, they want to be heard. They want to be loved. They want to be validated. And interestingly, people wouldn't validate that for me. I was just like, you know, like, why can I get that? Yeah. So it's kind of like, you know, with babies, a lot of times, doctors will tell you, don't pick your baby up every time they cry because they have to learn how to self-soothe. So in a way, the universe was teaching me self-love, how to self-soothe, how to validate myself. And so I wouldn't say spiritual maturity. It doesn't mean you're a jerk. It means you're young. It means you're young on your path and you're learning. And the only way we learn is through going through these things. And sometimes I think we're almost fated in a way to go through certain things if we ask to be a teacher. You know, if you want to create the kind of destiny where you're being a tarot reader or you're teaching people through a YouTube channel or you want to be a speaker or an author, be careful what you wish for, because how can you speak to someone that's going through something if you yourself have not been through it? So I mean, I'm not saying spiritual maturity makes you a superior person. I'm saying it makes life a lot easier, and it's a more joyful place to be. But
you got the crone energy.
Yeah, but you can have that at any age too. It's
right.
not age specific.
And I was actually going to bring that up. Being a spiritually mature person, you could be spiritually mature at 21, you could be one at 60, or reverse. You could think you are at 60 and be completely immature spiritually, like a lot. And I see that more often than I would like to.
And I think just because you may be spiritually mature, it doesn't mean that you're not going to go through experiences that you may not totally understand how to handle and feel like you're immature in that experience. I think when we believe that that's it, I'm mature now, that then you are not mature, because life continues to move forward. And just as the universe is constantly expanding, we as expressions of universe are constantly expanding and changing and growing.
Well, life has a funny way of showing you when you're acting like that.
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
Oh yeah, and give you a little shove, and you're like, oh, I'm falling, and I can't get up.
It's kind of like when people say, just age in general, that you're supposed to act a certain age when you are that age. Like when you're of an elderly status, you're supposed to act elderly, like with a cane and playing bridge. You're not supposed to be going to like strip clubs or out dancing with your boyfriend or anything like that, or say like, I'm 30. I feel like I'm in my early 20s mentally. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to reflect, and the same thing spiritually.
Yeah. Last question for our wrap-up, because we're out of time, but I want to just answer this last question from Tammy. Any advice for the spiritually immature witch?
Yeah, trust that you're being guided to something. Look for the signs, look for the symbols, look for the lessons, be patient, and treat yourself, learn to self-parent, learn to self-soothe. So when you're screwing things up, if you're feeling very lost, if you're in what's often referred to as the dark night of the soul, have compassion for yourself. A way I like to do that is separate myself into personalities, like imagining like little 2-year-old Joanna in there is like crying and sitting there. There's a mother side to me that can like comfort that person, and witches are great at using their imaginations that way and splitting off into different archetypes and things like that. So use what you've got to, most importantly, have compassion and love for yourself, and trust that this is not a permanent situation.
I would say it's a process, and it's usually a long process before you can get to a point where you can say like, I honestly feel like a spiritually mature person. This does not mean you know everything spiritually ever. Knowledge is ever coming. There's no end game for knowledge. So just being mindful, you're not trying to win a race. It comes with time.
I agree.
And experience.
I can't add anything to any of that. That was awesome. Thank you, Joanna, for joining us. This was wonderful. Yay! The time went by so quick.
It did.
It really did. Thank you so much for inviting me. This was great.
And everybody that's been watching, thank you for asking questions and making comments. We broadcast live every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Next Friday, on May 6th, we have Shadow Sun coming back, and we're going to be discussing what it means to be a psychic. On May 13th, Michael Blackthorne and Melissa, the Dreadful Girl, will be joining us, and we're going to be talking about thought forms and servitors. May 20th, Nico is going to rejoin us, and we're going to be talking about pagan ascension. And May 27th, Lilokin from YouTube will be joining us. Not sure what the topic's going to be. I'm sure it's going to be Wicca related somehow, since that is his area of expertise. So we hope you join us for the month of May. We have exciting people coming up for June, and I'm scheduling into July now, so be sure to stay tuned. And if you can't catch us live, video is always available for you to watch as many times as you like. So hopefully we'll see you next week. Thank you. And as always, I love you. Mwah.